we're sitting here with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talking about protein. Any of you guys want to know about protein synthesis, BCAAs, implications of protein, how much you need, how little you need? Feel free to throw your questions into the comment box.
You got a couple.
Sweet, you ready for them?
Ready.
Can you put on a good amount of size while intermittent fasting by eating a surplus?
It is person dependent, but if you are really looking for size, fasting is not the best way to do it. It would be challenging, but it can be done.
Even if they're in a surplus for the day during that window?
I mean, it can be done. It depends on if they're untrained or trained. The more untrained an individual is, the more they're likely to put on muscle tissue. The more trained they are, as an athlete, if they're an already trained athlete, then it's going to be very challenging.
That's a great answer. Yeah, it's always relative to where you're coming from, right? It's like if you've been trained and eating all the time.
Mm-hmm. So it depends on their training status.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a great experiment for someone to make, is like test it out. See if I guess it'll be person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to see, so I've been doing that, and I don't lose any muscle, like maybe a little bit, but it's more a result of my not training than, like if I train consistently, I could intermittent fast, and I think I would still gain muscle, or at least maintain muscle. So would it be my ideal scenario if I was trying to gain muscle? No.
And then the other thing actually you bring up is that the other way to stimulate muscle and to maintain muscle is through training. So you don't actually have to always feed, because the body can recycle its branched chains. It can recycle its muscle tissue, or its amino acid pool.
Super interesting. So yeah, who's the question from?
That is from Hungry Dogs Run Faster.
Hungry dogs do run faster. I like it. So great question. Depending on when you train, right? So maybe your thought would be, or depending on your current body composition, there's a lot of possible implications there, right? If you're over fat, maybe fasting is a good thing to bring your fat down.
Sure.
Yeah, bring your fat down and then allow your body to hormonally be more effective, and then muscle building makes more sense.
Absolutely.
So it depends on your current state. If you're someone who's very lean, then you probably don't want to be fasting. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Another one on, please talk on vegetarian diet.
From who?
This is from Ashwin Maru.
Ashwin, vegetarian dieting and protein. Vegan or vegetarian? Let's assume vegan.
Okay.
Ask the question you want to ask. I know what's coming out of your mouth. Let's go.
All right. So for an individual who's vegan...
No, the first question she's going to go is why?
Okay, it's true. It's why. So let's just say you need, in order to equal 1 chicken breast, you need 6 cups of quinoa to have it equal. So you need 1,000 calories of quinoa, 6 cups. I would throw up in my mouth. That's this much of quinoa to equal 1 chicken breast.
Okay, so before we make any rude comments, if it's moral, I understand. If it's health, if it's moral and ethical, that's your choice. If it's health, you may be mistaken. And Dr. Gabrielle's going to tell you why.
The body was designed, so animal protein was designed to support animal tissue. Plant protein was designed to support plant tissue. From a non-emotional, purely scientific...
Sure. There's some of the largest species on the planet that are vegetarian.
But they were designed to do that.
Right.
As humans, we are not designed based on our amino acid needs. We are not ruminants with 15 million stomachs. We were designed to be omnivores. So if an individual is vegan, they need to be very aware of their protein source. You can be vegan and be healthy, but because we live in a world of supplementation, so you need to add in, there's pea plant mixes with amino acids that are correct.
There's so many implications with that too, right? Because you're adding so many lectins that I think pea protein in most cases, or most vegan proteins, aren't optimal.
No.
Is there a way, I mean, we talked about this, what else would somebody who's lacking meat and animal proteins be lacking in their diet other than the amino acids? So, we can agree to disagree. Could it be done? Could it not be done? Who knows? Like, it's not optimal. Yeah,
high levels of zinc, high bioavailable levels of B vitamins, selenium, iron.
So basically everything.
Yeah, I mean, that meat, that protein is rich in nutrients. There is less bioavailability from plants, depending on how you get it. And if I could be vegetarian, I would. I would feel I tried to be vegetarian for a long time, and I actually ended up getting really sick. I was training in altitude and trying to be vegetarian, and I couldn't, my body wasn't able to be supported. And especially if they're women, right? So again, I don't think any of your guys would have PMS or go through the monthly cycle.
Well.
Maybe they have man periods, but if you don't,
Man period.
though, so women
It's a myriad.
yeah, it's a myriad. I've never heard that. So women tend to be more of the vegan vegetarians, and they actually, because of their cycles, it's probably the worst thing that they can do. And if they're doing it, they really need to be smart on supplementing branched chains and having good multis and methylated B vitamins.
Is there any good data on vegetarian implications on hormones? Like, is there anyone? Because like I would speculate testosterone would. I know there's implications that says when you eat meat, your testosterone goes up. Is there any data that says when you don't eat meat, it goes down?
I haven't seen that. It's only because I haven't read it. But
Yeah. Interesting. Anything else?
Yeah, tons actually. Let's see. Does insulin sensitivity decrease throughout the day?
insulin sensitivity increases throughout the day. So your higher carbohydrate meals should be either A, around training, or B, later in the day.
Why is that?
Because of the insulin sensitivity in the muscle, you become more sensitive. So your body is able to metabolize glucose and carbohydrates better.
Does that have to do with the cortisol rhythms?
I think it has to do with the waking and moving and actually utilizing the tissue.
Cool. Great question. Who's it from?
So don't have oatmeal in the morning. That's the worst. So actually, we should just touch on this.
Egg whites and oatmeal. Everybody below the planet.
The lowest carbohydrate meal I have for my patients is in the morning.
Always.
So they are eating protein and some fat.
What's your breakfast?
I don't eat breakfast. Who's done
Never?
breakfast? No.
What's your first meal of the day?
Probably around between 11 and 2.
Same.
And today was ground beef. That was from the plane that I left here yesterday.
Straight from the fridge.
Gross. So it's beef.
But
It's
it's
some
protein.
kind of, and it's usually ground. I don't like to have steaks, this kind of stuff.
Steak on a fork. There's pictures of me in every yearbook in high school with a piece of chicken on a fork. That was like my nickname or something.
Chicken on a fork.
Chicken on a fork. What else we got coming in, Joe?
Ryman rules. How do I know if I need more protein?
Good question.
You gotta calculate the numbers.
Just a numbers thing. What if I'm taking in 300 grams, 1 gram per pound, and I'm still sore? Like, do I know I'm hitting it, or how do
You're definitely hitting it.
Yeah.
300 grams. So the question is, how do you know if you're getting enough protein? You should be definitely taking enough to support your lean tissue, for sure.
So, but is it enough 1 gram per pound, or 1.5, or 2? Like, how do we know?
That's a good question, but I would say that the data is pretty clear that anywhere between 1.2 to 1.8 is a good range.
So
The younger you are, the less you need. Because the more you're driven by hormones, the older you are, the more you need. And of course, being distributed, everyone should get 30 grams of protein per meal. And it's easier to think about that rather than think about age. They should have, quality, distribution, and timing is key. Post-workout, the muscle is primed. You actually need a little bit less. But if you do 30 grams every time you feed, you're good. So
how much of an implication does digestion have in that? Like, what if someone just literally has poor digestion and taking more protein is not the right way to go? Because, like, you're just going to get it passed through.
I've had this conversation with Don Layman, my longtime mentor, and his argument, this is coming from him because we've discussed this, because there isn't a hard science answer to that, is that when you eat protein, it is going to get absorbed. It has to go through digestion and absorption.
Even if you're lacking...
Yeah, this is what he says, yes.
Interesting.
Because it has to go somewhere.
Well, yeah.
It does. Yeah.
What else you got, Trev?
As far as questions for Dr. Lyon, that seems to be about it. I got a couple training questions.
Shoot.
You shoot them? All right. Brian M. Do you actually believe thickening the bicep is a myth, or is there truth to it?
What does that even mean?
I would say, what does thickening mean? I don't really know what that means. So, Brian, if you're talking about length, you can't change the length of your bicep. If you're thinking about thickness, you could tremendously change thickness, whether it be width, whether it be height, or maybe it's depth. I don't know, but you can definitely change all those things with hypertrophy. But definitely can't change the length. Length is typically genetically predetermined. What else is good,
Here's a good one for you, Dr. Lyon. Are electrolyte sugar liquids an effective carbohydrate provider mid-workout?
I believe in training low.
Electrolyte sugar liquids like Gatorade?
I'm
Yeah, get it.
guessing, yeah.
I believe in training low. So there is pre-workout, intra-workout, and post-workout. Pre-workout, depending on what your goals are, right? I think training fasted is great. Post-workout is glycogen replenish, which is carbohydrates, and then separate from that is protein, which is more important for muscle recovery.
That's the best thing you've said all day. Talk a little bit. Why is it separate?
Because there's two separate processes happening. There's muscle glycogen repair. There's glycogen, and then there's protein repair. So if you are doing carbohydrates post, that is very particular for glycogen, but not muscle repair. So it depends on what the...
But to hear that, carbs first, then how much time between?
I mean, you should do it close together. I mean,
You can do them together?
Of course.
Yeah. But definitely paying attention to acknowledging their different systems.
Yeah.
And we know that mTOR signaling is dependent on the energy status of the cell.
It is.
So there's an implication there, right? And people aren't paying attention to that. Anything else, Trevor? You want me to get going with the...
They're starting to roll in now.
All right.
Is there correlation between constant mTOR stimulation and cancer?
Oh, gosh. The biggest driver of cancer is excess carbohydrates and calories. It is a metabolic dysregulation. I've never seen that protein causes cancer. So mTOR is in every cell. mTOR in particular, when it comes to muscle protein synthesis, for some reason everyone hones on muscle stimulation of mTOR. But muscle stimulation of mTOR is different than a cancer-driven obesity stimulation of mTOR. That's a super important point. Protein has never been shown to cause cancer. This is this erroneous thought of muscle is the organ of longevity. Everything is dependent on the health and quality of your muscle tissue.
I love it. That's a great answer.
So
It makes sense. Yeah.
It's just not true.
So when they talk about cancer being a metabolic disease, are we talking about specifically, not that it's your area of expertise, but specifically the function of the mitochondria? The ability of the cell to replicate, which is usually influenced by...
I'm not a cancer expert, but what I can tell you from the view of a muscle-centric perspective is that chronic stimulation of mTOR is the worst thing that you can do. Chronic stimulation of mTOR is not from protein. Protein is an mTOR trigger, muscle protein synthesis, and then the system resets. Small feedings of carbohydrates is what causes chronic mTOR signaling, excess calories over a period of time. So it is that.
So carbohydrates are influencing mTOR?
Of course, hugely. It's an energy sensor. But you always have to vet where your information is coming from. So the people that are talking about mTOR being this cancer-causing process, that may be true, but are they saying it through the perspective of somehow dietary protein is causing cancer versus excess calories, obesity, inflammation, other nutrients that are driving this mTOR signaling over a period of time?
All right, boys and girls, we are answering all of your questions live. Everything you want to know about protein, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, the protein doc, is here.
Except how to cook.
Don't cook the protein. Don't let her cook the protein.
No, not happening.
But she can tell you exactly what to order off the menu at the restaurant.
Yes.
Just kidding. So any questions you guys want to answer, we're answering them here live from the Mi40 gym in Tampa. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon coming at you. I got lots of questions. We talked a lot about, or briefly touched on, protein-sparing modified diet. Can you tell these guys what that is? Because I think you briefly touched on it for a minute, but I think that was before we were interrupted. What is it?
So we talk a lot about nutrition, and people think about nutrition as really body composition, but it's also the fastest and most effective medical modality that we have. And so nutrition and feeding strategies, not diet, but feeding strategies are medical modalities to change physiology. And one of the issues with individuals they are inflamed and they are driven. There's adiposity, and it drives free fatty acids in the bloodstream. And then it creates this, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, right? So it's all the disease of the muscle. So in order to revert back to a healthier standpoint, you need to take nutrient modalities. And one of those is a protein-sparing fast. And that is really eating the bare minimum and just eating 1.5 grams per kilogram, and you guys should not do this without supervision. You really need to work with a trained professional. A very low calorie diet, around 800 calories of just protein. And this is not my opinion. This is John Hopkins, Cleveland Clinic. They can look up protein sparing fast. And it was used, it's been used for many years to get fat and adiposity off the body very quickly. And it's less than 20 grams of carbohydrates. It is less than 3 grams of fat per ounce. So it's a very low fat, low carbohydrate diet.
Like the 1990s bodybuilder diet, pretty much. Any implications there? So, the fitness community has been misinformed around metabolic damage. Is there any implications there on like metabolic shutdown, dysregulation for doing these things over an extended period of time?
Absolutely. The body adjusts to whatever you feed it. However, if you are in such a state, if you are in such a state where you are inflamed and you've been having excess calories over a long period of time and low tissue, low muscle mass, then the first thing you have to do is deal with that. It is really important to work with a professional because I always track reverse T3, I always track thyroid, I always track my hormonal levels of my patients to see kind of where we're at. I mean, there is a benefit of feeding in surplus, but if you are talking about an obese person or someone who has to lose weight, they have, chances are, been eating in excess. And so you really have to get that under control. And of course, there's other things. There's environmental toxins, there's metals, there's all kinds of things that one could test for, which have implications in obesity.
Anything else to come in there, Trev?
Yeah. Assuming correct amount of protein is being taken, should all meals have complete profile of EAA for gaining and even maintaining muscle mass?
Yes. Yep.
So let's read that question again. So assuming that
it's a high quality protein.
Assuming it's a high quality protein, should all animal proteins have all the essential amino you need? Yes. They're called complete versus incomplete proteins, right? You want to talk about that?
Let's talk about collagen, shall we? Collagen is an incomplete protein. Collagen does not stimulate muscle protein synthesis.
Interesting.
It is high in proline and glycine, but it is extraordinarily low in the branched chain amino acids. So you need to determine what protein source you're getting and why you're utilizing it. It could be great for tendon repair. The dose is something like 65 grams, and this is anecdotal. 65 grams of collagen protein for change in...
Is it just exclusively the proline and glycine that are contributing to the collagen growth?
I don't think that we know, but what we do know is that it is not efficient or effective for muscle protein synthesis because it's clearly lacking mTOR.
Good to know. That's important because everyone's consuming collagen right now,
right.
And it's all marketed around the
It does
collagen.
Nothing for muscle. I mean, I'm sure it has other benefits, but when you're talking about maintaining the organ of longevity and the tissue, which is so essential for our wellness, because all the deficits begin in the muscle, that then adding collagen is not the correct way of thinking about feeding.
Brilliant.
All right. If insulin sensitivity increases throughout the day, does GLUT4 and GLUT12 bring glucose to the cell independent of insulin?
They're glucose transporters. So will you read that question again?
Yes. If insulin sensitivity increases throughout the day, does GLUT4 and GLUT12 bring glucose into the cell independent of insulin?
Yeah, so they're basically asking because is that just the GLUT4 or GLUT12 mechanism toward the end? What's the mechanism that improves insulin sensitivity if there's no insulin
Movement.
there? Just actually movement.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. And tips for protein, for optimizing protein absorption.
Exercise increases perfusion to the muscle. So if you want to increase your absorption rate, one, digestive enzymes helps the body, but two, exercise primes the muscle. Resistance exercise primes the muscle for absorption.
You take a lot of digestive enzymes?
I do.
Any particular, is it just proteolytic or is it hydrochloric acid or is it,
Betaine, hydrochloric acid, but I also test stomach acid. So some people feel that they need it and they don't actually. Right. So it's really important to test. I do a Heidelberg test.
Which is like take a couple and see if it burns?
No, which is wear this contraption, take it, you take this pill and it actually tests the stomach acid.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. what is your reasoning behind having breakfast at 11 or your first meal of the day at 11?
Because I think fasting is great. I don't like to eat breakfast. If you eat breakfast, then you've now triggered that cascade and you're hungry. At least for me, I'm hungry all day.
I agree. It's so much easier to not eat breakfast.
Yeah.
So much easier. But so is that no calorie containing food, or is that you still do coffee and tea and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any considerations there? Because some people are saying, hey, coffee's going to increase your cortisol.
It does.
And that's okay.
I have no intention of giving it up. The more coffee, the better.
I like it. And Ryman rules again, is training fasted bad?
No, train low.
I do it every day. Yeah. Yeah, for me, cortisol is higher. I feel better mentally. My energy is great. I have no distractions because, typically I train first thing in the morning. I haven't turned on my phone or turned on my emails or something like that. I feel amazing. And I feel like my ability to sustain the focus is always great. So some people, I find there's a couple different phenotypes as far as training. Some people have an easy time focusing and a hard time getting pumped, and we have some people who have a hard time focusing and an easy time getting pumped, and some people, so there's all these different phenotypic expressions of how you reflect or how you train. Yeah. So if you're someone who has a hard time focusing, typically, I think training fasted, particularly in the morning, will be amazing for you. Whereas if someone has an easy time focusing, they may not be able to get it, like a pump. Is not always the best thing. Like you're not going to feel like not always. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't always feel great muscular contraction pumps and things like that when you're fasting.
Yeah, and I think finding your rhythm. Some people are morning people. Some people are evening people. Finding your rhythm and being consistent.
Well, let's segue beautifully into that conversation around the circadian rhythm conversation. So resetting your circadian rhythms.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So they looked at alternative ways to affect metabolism rather than just change dietary strategies. So a lot of the research came out of clock genes and circadian rhythms from a medical modality because they needed to figure out a way of how can we change people's body composition without altering what they're eating, because making dietary changes tends to be really difficult for people. So they started studying clock genes, and within that came circadian rhythm realignment.
What's a clock gene?
Clock genes are the genes within the body that run on a light-dark cycle. So for example, the liver turns over, it has enzymatic turnover, say that happens at 3 a.m. every morning. And it goes back to, interestingly, correlates back to traditional Chinese medicine where they said the organs had their own time. We're finding that actually that's true, and that is the inherent physiological process in the body. And so we know that if we're eating sporadically or eating at different times or outside of our natural rhythm, then we can change physiological processes. Mm-hmm. All of that being said, I'll give you an example of what that means. So I was teaching about a study that they had two groups of rats. One group of rats ate nocturnally within their feeding window, and they ate a standard American diet of McDonald's, because we know rats like McDonald's, whatever. And then they had another group that ate during the day when the rats should be sleeping. What they found is the rats that had the shifted rhythm all became diabetic, had elevated levels of blood glucose, had lower brain volume, made more mistakes, gained weight. But what was interesting is all they did was change the timing of the feeding, but everything else was the same.
There's a couple of really cool studies like that. Like there were some studies that just shifted the eating window from 16 hours to 8. Same amount of calories in the group that ate in the 8-hour window, lost body fat, lost weight. So
exactly, and so those are protocols that I use in my clinic. I mean, time restricted feeding is essential, where they eat within an 8-hour window. You can feed at 12, 4, and 8, and then you give them a high protein feeding bolus. You keep their carbohydrates less than 30 grams per meal. You keep insulin level low, and you can change individuals' body's composition. But if they're not willing to change their diet and you restrict their feeding window, they'll lose weight.
Can you guys come in?
Do carbs before training hinder your catecholamines?
That's a good question. So it depends. If they're running on protein, your catecholamines are going to work, they're going to be increased to increase protein gluconeogenesis. But
Yeah, I would presume.
Yes.
Yes, so it's going to increase serotonin, which is going to typically decrease dopamine and decrease, thereby decrease catecholamines. So typically, I don't know if the mechanism is that direct, but it'll definitely decrease cortisol, which is energetic, and increase serotonin, which is going to make you more sleepy.
Right.
So I don't know if it's directly affecting catecholamines, but my logic would say yes.
And you would think, what predator eats before it goes to hunt? None. So I don't have to do that.
Although, yeah.
And
Unless it's a cupcake.
this might be a good one to finish up on.
Yeah.
What new therapies are coming out that you're loving, Dr. Lyon?
Oh, that is a great one. So you and I touched on this a day ago. So before I say anything about this, I'm not an expert, but I'm very interested in peptides. I'm very interested in the peptides and the SARMs, which is selective androgen receptor modulators, and these peptides, BP157 and TB500. I think it's the way of the future. And we don't necessarily know so much about it, but I'm very fascinated of ways to augment muscle and ways that we don't know.
Right.
But I think that's the next wave.
Yeah, it scares me out of my mind, but
I'm totally into it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
I'm totally interested in, there's these mitochondrial uncouplers, and I mean, there has to be ways that we can augment the system that is not harmful. So anyway, long story short, the peptides, I think, are the way of the future.
Throw one last little shout out there for heat shock proteins and talking about that and the implication in health.
Yes, heat shock proteins. Again, it goes back to suffering. Heat shock proteins are upregulated. It allows, we were talking about detoxification in the liver and the body to detoxify. Putting yourself in very environmentally uncomfortable situations allows an internal stress to happen, which primes the body to then rejuvenate.
Do you feel that cryo does the same, cold?
If it's from head to toe, not just from neck down. It has to be the whole thing.
Because of the abundance of neurons in your head.
It has to be everything.
Guys, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, you can find her on social media. Gabrielle Lyon.
Yeah.
Is it at Gabrielle Lyon?
Yes.
Instagram, Facebook.
Yes, my website.
Which is?
drgabriellelyon.com.
There you have it. The protein expert, guys. There's so much awesome stuff coming from her. She's writing books. She's doing research. She's contributing content for the Mi40 Nation site. So lots of really great stuff, and look forward to seeing more from Dr. Gabrielle soon. Have an awesome day.